Hare Krishna. Welcome back and the warm greetings to all the participants. So in the last session, we talked about three important concepts. Today we will talk about the fourth concept. So three important concepts were, first, we discussed about how a creator is behind this beautiful creation. Second, we talked about why we are bothering to know about that creator, what we will get after knowing that creator, even though we know that he's in another realm and it's not easy to understand him. Third, we discussed that why we are quoting Bhagavad Gita or other revealed scriptures. What is the authority of Bhagavad Gita? Because we are trying to explain the above two concepts by quoting Bhagavad Gita. So we should know the what is the authority of Bhagavad Gita. So today, in the fourth session, fourth concept, we will talk about happiness. And happiness is the common denominator in all of us. We all looking for the happiness without exception. It's actually the driving force for all the activities. And even in the America, they have set up a ministry, a cabinet ministry, to see that all the citizens are happy. So even we know that it's a louder concern for all of us, that how we can become happy. So we'll discuss about this important concept. First, we will understand what is happiness. So we'll see one video and let's understand what it is.
In the last 6 months, more than 1,000 books have been published about it. Universities around the world are teaching on it. For 30 years, scientists have been studying it. Governments are appointing cabinet positions to oversee it. The United Nations named an official day after it. Google Analytics prove people are searching for it. In fact, it's one of humanity's oldest pursuits. Happiness. We are wealthier, more educated, and live longer than any previous generation. And as a nation, the U.S. is one of the wealthiest, most powerful, and technologically advanced. And in the most recent World Happiness Report, the United States ranked 17th. And during the Great Depression, when there was little to be happy about, we were actually 18% less depressed than we are now. We have been taught that hard work equals success, which equals happiness, right? Wrong. Research proves happiness is actually a precursor to success, not the other way around. Did you know? Neuroscience proves that we are hardwired to perform at our best when we are happy. Studies show that happy, positive, optimistic people earn higher incomes, set and achieve more aggressive goals, experience less stress, remain calm in high-pressure situations, are more energetic, recover from illness faster, and live longer. Happiness is serious business. When we engage in positive, real-life relationships, our bodies release chemicals that actually help reduce anxiety and increase concentration and focus. How you feel and your attitude toward life all stem from your thoughts, actions, and where you focus your time and energy. Yet we are constantly surrounded by negativity. If we want things to change, we have to create the change. And we start by choosing positivity and happiness. Just imagine the possibilities if there were more happy and positive people in this world. A world with more peace, optimism, and compassion is possible. Like a pebble thrown into a pond, it only takes one to create the ripple of happiness. Happiness is so contagious and infectious that one positive person can spread happiness to more than 1,000 people. That means all it takes to create change on a local, regional, state, country, global scale is one person. And research shows that just by spreading happiness, you actually become happier. You can choose happiness and choose to share it. You can be the catalyst to spread it directly and indirectly. Are you that one? It starts with you, yet it's bigger than you. Happiness is bold. It is courageous, audacious, and challenging. You have the power to choose happiness and to spread it. Join the movement. Share the movement. Be the one who makes the difference and live happy.
So in this video, we saw that how the equation of hard work, success, and happiness is different than what we are aware of, and the importance of the happiness. Now let's see what's the English dictionary is saying about happiness. According to the English dictionary, feeling or showing pleasure or contentment is the happiness. So in this session, we'll have the two parts. In the first part, we will discuss about the happiness that we are aware of, the kind of the things we do to acquire that happiness that we are aware of. And the second part of the session, we'll talk about the real happiness, the absolute happiness, with fulfilling all expectations, which has meaning. So first we will understand the first part, then we will go to the second part. So what are the expectations of happiness? What we are expecting from happiness? If we get the happiness, what should we have with that happiness? So it should be everlasting. It's not that it's there for few days, few years. No, we are seeking something which is everlasting. So that is the first expectation from the happiness. The second one is without interruption. It's not that we are not seeking such kind of happiness which is having a lot of interruption in between. No, we are looking for the happiness which is without interruption. That is one of the very important expectation from the happiness. The third one is unlimited happiness. It's not that it has some limit. After reaching that limit, we'll seek some more happiness from other source. No, the happiness should be unlimited. That are the expectation that we are looking for. That kind of happiness we are looking for. Now, so we are starting the first part of the session that you are already aware of what kind of happiness we are going to discuss. So let's see it analytically. What's there in this kind of happiness? So this happiness is centered around Deha that we discussed in the third session of this series. We have discussed that we are different from the body. So we'll discuss the happiness centered around the body, that is the Deha. And the Deha consists of, this body consists of different senses. Now, if I give something to these senses, we'll experience some pleasure. That is even given in the scriptures. The small samples of pleasure. We'll analyze what kind of pleasure it is in further slides. So we have mainly 5 kinds of senses. And when the senses come in touch with sense object, it combines together, then we experience some kind of pleasure that we are aware of. Like my eye is a sense. Then what is the sense object? The sense object is a beautiful form, maybe a scenery, movie, a good form. So when the senses and the sense object comes together, then we experience a shot of happiness. So we'll see, like for the eyes, a good form is a sense object. So when it combines together, we interpret that it's a happiness. So we are running after this happiness from the eye. For the ears, a melodious song may be a sense object. For the nose, a fragrance. A good fragrance is a sense object. So when it comes in touch with the sense object, then we'll experience some happiness. Touch a smooth surface is the sense object. For the tongue, is a good taste is a sense object. A delicious food is a sense object. So when it comes together, we experience some sort of happiness. So this is the happiness. Now if we analyze this kind of happiness from the senses, so we'll see that in the beginning it seems that we are experiencing happiness, but if with the time it decreases, and at the end it will become misery. Even in the scripture it is said that it's all there in our mind, it's our perception. Suppose now it's summer, so this AC is pleasurable for me. It's giving me happiness because it's giving happiness to my skin. But the same AC, the same object, if I'll use in the winters, the coming winters, it will be miserable for me. So it's there in the mind. So with the time, it will decrease. And if we take one example, suppose I like rasgulla or gulab jamun. Now, how much I can eat? 20, 30, 40? Not more than that, because I have a limitations of the tongue. So few things we have identified. First thing, because of the limitations of the senses, we can't experience or cross the limit of our senses to experience happiness. The second thing is, if we experience this happiness also, it will decrease with the time. It will not be forever. It's not the everlasting happiness. So it will decrease with the time. In the short span also, like I gave the example of rasgulla, and for the long span also, we'll become old, we'll become diseased, then the same thing will be miserable for us. For certain people, sugar is quite pleasurable. For the diabetic people, it's miserable. So it changes. So these 3 points we have identified. Now the material happiness. Even the fourth point that we'll try to acknowledge about this material happiness is it can also put one in danger. So it's a dangerous thing. So we'll discuss one very important point from the Vedic literature too about the view about this material happiness. Actually, Vedic scriptures give a spectrum about the material happiness. We are talking about the first part of the session, the material happiness. In this spectrum, the lower kind of happiness is sensual happiness. And one special thing about this spectrum is, if you choose the lower slides of this spectrum, you will get the less magnitude happiness. If you choose the higher magnitude or the slides of the spectrum, you will get more happiness. So the lower part of the spectrum is sensual happiness. Sensual happiness that we discussed, that when the senses comes in touch with sense object, then that kind of happiness that we experience is sensual happiness. Then the sensual happiness, above the sensual happiness is mental happiness, or happiness that we derive in relationship, is a gratification that we can experience. And one more fundamental is, if we get higher happiness, we can forget the lower happiness. If I give you dairy milk, you can forget the small pulse toffee. So if we get the relationship happiness, happiness that we derive in relationships, you can forget the lower happiness of sensual happiness. So in relationship, you have seen that many times a boy in a relationship with a girl, or maybe mother in the relationship with a small kid, sometimes used to forget to eat food also. If you see the reason, tongue is a sense, food is a sense object. When it comes together, it will give some pleasure. But in relationship, it's a higher happiness. So if somebody is getting higher happiness, he can forget the lower happiness. For him, this lower happiness will become insignificant, non-important. So relationship, this is there in the material domain only. Now, above the relationship happiness is intellectual happiness. Suppose if you crack something, invent something, discover something, that time you will experience the higher happiness, that is intellectual happiness. Suppose you all cracked BITSAT examination or IIT JEE examination. Now how long we'll jump in our house that we have cracked IIT examination? Now we have different challenges. So it's there for only moments. That time, that particular time will not think about sex, or that time will not think about relationship, because I'm telling that intellectual happiness is above relationship happiness and sensual happiness. So now let's freeze out the points that we have discussed. The first thing is, if we get the higher happiness, we will forget the lower happiness in the material domain. The second thing is, with the time, material happiness will decrease because of the limitations of the senses, because of in the short span also, in the long span, because we will be diseased, we will be old, and that time the same happiness, the same source of happiness will become miserable. So that is all about material happiness. Now, how this material happiness can even put us into danger? So if we take a few examples from here, I came across a very beautiful verse in the scriptures. It says that there are the five creatures that can denote or teach us about this concept, how we can be put into danger because of our senses, because of this material happiness. Like the Meena means fish, because the predominant sense in the fish is tongue. Because of the tongue, she loses her life, because the fisherman outside the water actually know everything, what in what way the fish will react. So he simply put the hook in the water and simply waits. So the fish, carried by his tongue, just put her tongue on the hook and lose her life. That we need to understand that because of the predominant sense of tongue, although she knows from the experience that it may bring many dangers for me, but still carried away by the senses. Now the second example is bees. Bees, even if bees can even bore in the wood. It can even bore a big trunk of the tree. But the dominant sense in the bees are the smell. So even he used to be very immersed in that thing, that at the night when the sunflower, that lotus, when it closes, loses his life till morning. So that is the thing that we can take the example of the strong sense of smell. Now the third one is moth. The weak point in the moth is fire. The sight, the sense is so strong that even know that it is too heat there near the fire, but still just hover around the fire, in the morning dies. So that is the one more example. The deer is even, that is kuranga, is a very fast animal. You can't catch deer in this way. So hunter, they used to play a very melodious music, because the weak sense in the deer is her ear. So after hearing that flute music, she used to become like a deer in this scenery, stand still. Then hunter very silently used to put the arrow inside the deer. So that is the thing. And the elephant, the weak point in the elephant is his skin. So the she elephant are trained in such a way to make the male elephant, because it's very difficult to catch an elephant, more stronger than 100 human being, a man, more than even 100 human beings are weaker than the strength of the elephant. So how to make that elephant trapped into because of the sensation on the skin, she elephant is trained to touch the skin of the elephant, and as soon as she elephant touches the skin of the elephant used to follow the she elephant. And after that, they make some pit, and in that pit he elephant used to fall, because she elephant is trained in that way. So we can understand that how the senses can bring a dangerous situation for us. And the shloka says that, what about the human beings? The human beings have all the five senses very strong, and it's driving us in the different direction. It's like the 5 different horses, and each horse wants a different thing. So it's just pulling us in a different direction. So it can bring a lot of dangers in our life. Maybe today we are not realizing, because with the time we will realize that it will become miserable and even can put us in dangers. Now, the 3 characteristics that we understood about material enjoyment is the cause of misery. It brings futility, insubstantiality, and it's temporary. Futility, we crave for something and we don't get it. Let's try to understand this topic through a small video. Okay, so we have seen this video, and one very important point that I wanted to put through this video. This is the characteristics of the material happiness. What is the characteristics of the material happiness? That the too much time and energy will go to reach the goal, and after reaching the goal, that will bring a very small insignificant happiness, and after reaching there also, it will bring so many desires to fulfill again. So we crave for something or we may not get it. So that is the case in the material happiness. We crave for something, we get it, but it turns to be an anticlimax. It is temporary. We crave for something, we get it, and we are satisfied with it for some extent, but then it is taken away from us. For example, the beauty was given to these actresses, but now they are old. Now it is taken away from them. So it is a characteristics of material happiness. So we'll freeze all the points about the material happiness before concluding the first part of the session, that because of our limited senses, we can't experience happiness beyond a limit. That is the first point. The second point is it decreases with time. The third point is if we get the higher happiness, we can forget the lower happiness. And we talked about 3 levels of happiness in the sequence. The first one is sensual happiness, then mental happiness, then intellectual happiness. But all the 3 kinds of happiness are temporary in nature, not giving us what we are looking for. We are looking for something which are everlasting. It's temporary in nature. So we are looking for something, but it's not giving us that in that extent. The conclusion will be we will be frustrated, we will be dissatisfied. I have seen many people, they have all the things that we are desiring for, but they are dissatisfied in equal extent as us. Because we need to understand the money, the desirables that we have desired will not give us same effect. So we need to understand that we will get dissatisfaction if we are not getting the same extent of happiness that we are desiring for. Then the question is why? Where we went wrong? So we'll start the second part of the session where we'll discuss where we went wrong and what is the happiness, what is the alternative happiness, or what is the actual happiness that will give us or provide all the expectation that we are looking for. So the first reason is we have identified ourselves with the body. As we have discussed in the third session that we are different from the body. We are not this body. So we have identified, suppose I have identified myself with a kurta, or a person who's driving is identifying himself with the car. So he's giving all the facilities to the kurta, but he's not taking care of the body. Then he's a fool. And we are saying that we are not this body only. We are something different. And that we have discussed in the fourth session, that we are soul. And the consciousness is the symptom of the soul. So soul is, if we not give the things to the soul that is looking for, then we will get dissatisfaction and frustration. So first thing, that is a practical thing. First we should have the knowledge to understand that we are different from the body. Then we will try to stop or give an alternate way to give satisfaction to the spiritual senses that we will discuss in the later slides. Body imposes 3 limitations to the happiness. Even if we are thinking that certain things will give me happiness, but the body will impose 3 limitations that is by the law made by the creator of this world. The disease will come. That time we can't experience the happiness the way we are experiencing now. Now the second is old age. In the old age, we'll experience some different sorts of miseries. So that is there. Now the third one is death. The death is one important thing. Even if we acquire so many things also, at the point of death, we need to leave everything and we have to go away from this temporary world. Now we'll see one video about a person, Steve Jobs.
With the projected failure of the paywall, we're in dire straits. We really need your help.
To help news gathering organizations find new ways of expression so that they can afford to get paid, so they can afford to keep their news gathering and editorial operations intact, I'm all for.
Great. Can you elaborate? Give us any specifics?
It's complicated.
Steve!
Oh my God!
Call an ambulance.
Steve! Are you...
that how Steve Jobs lost his life. He had everything. He had everything. Can you put off the screen? Okay. So he had everything. He had all the accomplishment. Still, at the point of death, he had to leave everything and come to this thing. So body is imposing three limitations on us, that is disease, old age and death. So that is the characteristics of the material happiness. Because of the body, we are restricted to enjoy even the material happiness. Now what is the alternative? What is the happiness that Krishna is recommending in the Bhagavad Gita? And Bhagavad Gita teaches us a universal principle. It's common for all the people, it's for all the places, it's for all the circumstances. Even if we are looking for some kind of happiness, if we have some expectation from certain happiness, if you're not getting that expectation, we will be frustrated and dissatisfied. That we understood. But a wise man will not go for this kind of happiness that will bring dissatisfaction and frustration. He will look for the alternative that can give us everlasting happiness. And that Krishna talked in the Bhagavad Gita. And he said in the Bhagavad Gita, an intelligent person does not take part in the source of misery. Because I told, the senses brings miseries because of limitations of the body, which are due to the contact with the material senses. So what he is saying to Arjuna, such pleasures have a beginning and an end. This is one of the criteria. If you want to check certain happiness is material or not, you just check either it has some beginning or end. If it has beginning, then it's material happiness. Material happiness means dissatisfaction, frustration, limitations, futility. So he will look for an alternative happiness. What he is saying, so the wise man does not delight in them. He is not feeling happiness in these kind of material happiness. An intelligent person does not take part in such source of miseries. Even he is not craving for such kind of happiness that brings these limitations, which are due to the contact with the material senses. So what he is saying to Arjuna, such pleasures have a beginning and an end. So the wise man does not delight in them. So now the question is, what is the alternate happiness? That is a spiritual happiness. Beyond this domain that we talked, that is the material domain, and beyond this material domain, there is a spiritual domain. And there in the spiritual dimensions. So from last many years, we were running after these happinesses. So it's quite new for us to understand the spiritual happiness. We have never experienced this as spiritual happiness. So we'll talk about that happiness. You may have many questions about spiritual happiness, how to attain it, whether we will get happiness or not, what is the guarantee. So we'll discuss in the later sessions, and in between, if you feel some question that you can put in the chat box, I'll try to answer in the end of the session. So spiritual happiness, now we'll see what are the characteristics of the spiritual happiness before understanding what exactly is spiritual happiness. What are the practices that are involved in spiritual happinesses? It is said in one of the revealed scriptures given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We'll understand that who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said that such happiness is like Anandam Mudhivardhanam. What is Ananda? Ananda means happiness. Mudhivardhanam, Vardhanam means increasing. Pratipadam, every step. It's exponentially increasing at every step. That is the characteristics of the spiritual happiness. And what is the practice is also given in this verse. The chanting of the holy name of Krishna expands the blissful ocean of transcendental life. It gives us a cooling effect to everyone and enables one to taste full nectar at every step. Now, what are the highlights? Unlimited happiness like ocean. It's unlimited. There's no limit. It's not that body is imposing some limitations on these kinds of happiness, because it's directly connected to Dehi, and Dehi is the soul. So it has unlimited happiness, ever increasing happiness. As I told, it is increasing at every step. It's exponentially increasing. And the third is every step relishing without any interruption. And exactly these three things we were looking for. And in every happiness, these are the expectations. So this is very important thing. Now we'll do a comparison, a comparative study between the material happiness and the spiritual happiness. So material happiness, we have seen the graph that in the beginning it seems to be high, and with the time it decreases, and after that it will become a miserable because of the limitations of the body and other things, limitations of our senses. Now what about the spiritual happiness? Spiritual happiness initially may be very difficult for us to bring taste for spiritual practices. It is because we are diseased condition. We are in the diseased condition. We may not experience that kind of happiness. We may feel that it's too laborious to do these practices and it's not giving us as much result as material happiness are giving in the beginning. But if we do practices on the regular basis, even the Krishna recommended to Arjuna, if you practice again and again with faith, with devotion, a stage will come when you will experience such high category of happiness. And after attaining this high level of happiness, we can forget all the material happiness in the material domain. Now, if we do the comparison, material happiness is limited, spiritual happiness is unlimited. It decreases with time because of the limitation of body and the senses, and it increases with time. It's very interesting that something which is increasing with time, so we should aspire for this kind of happiness. It is interrupted in between, there are so many challenges, and it is uninterrupted. It's not that there are so many stumbling blocks in between. If we start our journey in the spiritual happiness or spiritual practices, it will be uninterrupted. Then the next question is, how do you get it? So I am requesting you, if in between you are feeling that some points are uncovered or you want to ask something, kindly put it in the chat box. So what is the process to get the spiritual happiness and understand the difference between material happiness and the spiritual happiness? Because the realization will come when we will start experiencing the spiritual happiness. Then only we will feel that, okay, material happiness is insignificant. So we need to start unplugging happiness from material things. Our vision should be very clear. We should have the clarity in the thoughts and in action, that the material thing will not give us happiness. I'm not saying that stop eating food or stop hearing some melodious song. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that just feed your soul what spiritual senses are, because if you feed the spiritual sense, your soul will be satisfied. So start unplugging. Don't be too much delightful when you get something materially, because we know that we have understanding that one day we have to lose it. So we need to unplug the happiness from the material things, and we have to plug in the spiritual activities. See, the one most important thing is not that stopping the material activity. It's only that engaging in the spiritual activity. So it's not that we are saying that we are zero, or we are just make it all zero, inert, go in the sadhana. No, we are just engaging our senses in the spiritual activity that will spiritualize our senses and awaken our spiritual senses. So that is very important, to plug into the spiritual activities. So these two slides are not inseparable. We can't say that, okay, I have unplugged the material things, I have unplugged the things that are giving the material happiness. It's not that. The second point is, have we plugged in the spiritual activities? If we plugged into the spiritual activities, then only we can experience the higher happiness. Then only we can forget the insignificant happiness that we derive from the material things. Like chanting, as we introduced in the first session, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We confronted many such questions in the first session, that how chanting can give us, is like a repetition of a name of some person, how it can give us the higher happiness. So actually, if you start practicing it, we'll get that happiness. Now the question comes, like somebody asked that he's chanting from last 3 months, still he's not getting that happiness. First, we need to understand we are in the diseased condition. By chanting again and again, we are making us cure. And after that, after getting cured, we can experience that happiness. It's a reality. It's a fact. It's a realized knowledge. So start plugging in spiritual activities. I'm not saying that, okay, you will see it after 12 years, 13 years. If you do properly as per recommendation or prescription, you will get the result. Suppose a doctor is saying you to take paracetamol in the night after dinner in this way with the water or the milk. If you follow the prescription as it is, as told by the doctor, then you will see the result. If you are not following the prescription, if you are taking it in the way you want, then it will not give as much result that it is expected to give. So that this thing we need to understand. We'll see one small video to understand what meditation can do, what's this material and spiritual perspective.
Benefits of meditation. Meditation has been the focus of thousands of studies over the past 50 years. Today we're going to take a look at the top 6 benefits adopting a meditation habit can have for you. The first benefit is that it physically changes your brain. A study conducted in 2011 at Harvard, led by a Dr. Sarah Lazar, found that meditating for just 8 weeks increases your brain size in 3 crucial areas. The left hippocampus, which is responsible for your ability to learn as well as your ability to retain information. The posterior cingulate, which is involved in your ability to control where your mind wanders. And the temporal parental junction, which is responsible for empathy and compassion. Meditation doesn't only grow the good parts of your brain. This same study found that after 8 weeks of meditation, there were also decreases in cell volume in the amygdala, which is the area of your brain that is responsible for fear, anxiety, and stress. The second benefit of meditation is that it reduces bad feelings. To further expand on the last point made, there have been numerous studies that look solely at the effects of meditation on emotions such as stress, depression, and anxiety. Now, stress isn't inherently bad for you. In fact, a little stress is actually healthy for you. However, there are many people who stress too much, and this can cause serious health problems. A study in 2004 found that meditation can help you better manage as well as dramatically decrease the negative side effects of stress. A recent study published on JAMA Internal Medicine by Professor Willem Kuyken worked with people who suffered from depression. Kuyken found that mindfulness meditation helped people, quote, just as much as commonly prescribed antidepressant drugs, end quote. People undergoing the study had a 31% less of a chance of relapsing. A similar study in 2014 managed by a Dr. Elizabeth Hoge worked with people diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. She found that meditating for just 8 weeks dramatically reduced the anxiety symptoms. And if all of these studies still aren't enough to convince you that meditation reduces bad feelings, researchers of Johns Hopkins published a paper on JAMA Internal Medicine in which they reviewed over 19,000 meditation studies, and they came to the conclusion that meditation helps ease depression and anxiety. The third benefit of meditation is that it helps you overcome bad habits. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that is responsible for willpower. A study conducted in 2015 found that meditation
and you can see all the benefits of the meditation. So the next thing is we can do is by reading Bhagavad Gita. We may not be fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad Gita in the first reading. So what we need to do is we'll send you from the next level, because this is the last session of first level. This is a primary level. Now we will move to the next level. After 2-3 days, we'll get a call and an email regarding the second level. So we'll send one link, and after you can read the ebook. And after that we'll come to, in the third level, we'll understand the different instructions in the Bhagavad Gita. So even the reading Bhagavad Gita is a spiritual practice. It will feed our soul and it will awaken our spiritual senses. So that is one thing. We can take prasadam, that we'll understand in the third level. So he's a source of happiness. So we'll take questions now. And most important thing before concluding today's session is, see, spiritual happiness is a new dimensions for all of us. And we have understood how scriptures are so valid, so relevant for all of us. It may need some time. Plus important is you start practicing it. If you start practicing it, you will come to know and you will start realizing it. Then you will feel to preach others about it. So this is the important science. So we'll take questions now. Okay. So there is one question, will be different from clearing bank examinations. So is there any difference in both happiness? The result one get from clearing UPSC will be different from bank. Okay. So you're talking about two different slices in material domain only. It depends upon, as I told, it's all the game of our mind. For me, AC is pleasurable now. In the winters, it will be not pleasurable. It will give misery to me. Similarly, you're talking about different slices, bank examination or the higher expected examination is UPSC examination. So if you, in the mind, if you make it that you have a desire to clear UPSC examination, you will talk a lot about UPSC examination, you will make it a hype about UPSC examination. So you talked about the same field. Let's say somebody is a student of mathematics and he wants to clear the PhD examination of chemistry department. So for him is the hype to clear the chemistry examination. But if we do PhD in mathematics only, it would be easy. So it's not that, it's all the game of our mind. How we put the things in front of our mind, how the senses are conveying the knowledge to the mind, and the mind will interpret and make a chemical for it and will feel the different grades of happiness according to that. But it comes into the same category of happiness, intellectual happiness in the material domain. Now the next question is, what should one do? One should prepare for big examination, or same happiness one can get by any job? Is happiness related only to the spiritual happiness or any role of material position? See, as a spiritualist, we are talking that we should not endeavor a lot. It's not that we should not prepare for your examination. But the thing is, we have to be satisfied with whatever we are getting. There's something there in our destiny, but we have to work for it. We have to put our chesta in that. Correct? So be satisfied whatever. If you develop a lot of attachment for something, if you will not get, because material happiness characteristics is we can crave for it, but maybe will not get that. So that time it will give a lot of misery and pain to us. We should prepare with a understanding, with a clarity in our vision that this is not the goal of our life. Because anyhow you have to take retirement at the age of 50 or 60. Or in between also, if our lifespan is short or it's already distant, then we have to leave by leaving this job. We may, because we are now preparing, so we may have the different preferences. So what should I do? What should I do? And where will get the happiness? No, you prepare according to your intellectual level and you set that, okay, this much endeavor I can put, but don't neglect the spiritual responsibilities for the sake to fulfill just the material duty, because it's already destined. You have to just put a minimum endeavor to fulfill that. Okay, I hope it's helping. Next question is, Hare Krishna, can you please tell me again spiritual happiness only? Okay, spiritual happiness is connected to Dehi, the soul. That is our actual constitutional position. We are the soul. We are different from the body. Now, the spiritual happiness, if we feed our soul, then we will get the spiritual happiness. Now the next question is, how do we get the spiritual happiness? We will get the spiritual happiness by spiritual practices. It will awaken our spiritual senses. And what are the spiritual practices? So Krishna told in the Bhagavad Gita, you do your work very nicely, but at the same time, you recognize Krishna as only doer. You recognize that Krishna is the only person who is taking all pleasure. You only recognize Krishna, then it would be helpful. Because if you understand clearly what you have to do two important things if you want to implement this in your practical life. The first thing is, as Krishna instructed Arjuna, Mam Anusmaran Yuddhaicha, you do your duties nicely. Let's say for you the duty is now, as you made the duty that you have to study. You study nicely. But think that I'm not the enjoyer. It's not that I'll achieve something by study and after that I'll get that happiness. You will be attached with the goal, and after that if you'll not get or get it in the less extent, you will be frustrated, you will be dissatisfied, you will have to face misery. You just think that, okay, I have to do this duty for the sake of doing, and you just forget about the result, and whatever result you will get, you just give it to Krishna. We'll understand in between. I'm putting a higher philosophy that I've not introduced Krishna before, but we'll understand in the later sessions. And the second point you can do is, like Krishna told in the Bhagavad Gita, Man manao bhav mad bhakto madhya ji mam namaskaro. You can do 4 things, but at least first thing you can do to think about Krishna, to hear the Krishna's pastime. You associate with the devotees who are practicing spirituality. If you associate with the devotees or the people who are practicing spirituality, you will get a motivation to practice it, and after that you will get taste for it, and after that your life will be successful and you will have the realized knowledge that theoretically I gave today. Okay. Now the next question is, as a student, what one should do if one plans to live a happy life? Students can prepare and crack any examination, or one should choose higher examination. If one fail, he can clear, as I answered in the previous question, Akshay. How spiritual happiness is related to the material position, or no relation? There is no such relation. I've seen many people, they are fully renounced, still they are so happy. As we discussed in the first session, mostly it will be uploaded on our channel, on the Bits Pilani channel. Till tonight, you can see the first session of this series. You'll get to know that there is no link between desirable and benefits. Don't think that if you crack this examination, you'll get all these happiness. No, there's no such relationship. Many people don't have these desirables, but still they are too happy. So there is no relationship as such in case of spiritual happiness. Okay, we'll take next question. Any material happiness can give spiritual happiness, or not? A spiritual happiness is totally independent. As I told, it's completely independent. In the material domain, the different kinds of happiness that I told are interrelated. We may have some intellectual happiness, at the same time we may have some mental happiness, some portion of sensual happiness, but spiritual happiness is not in the domain of material happiness. Now one last question. Just like the material happiness exists for few slices of time, correct? Do the spiritual happiness is also same? Does it also lies for a day or a few days or forever once it felt? No, it's forever. As I told, the characteristics of the spiritual happiness is everlasting, and it's increasing step by step. As we move forward, it will increase. That's why we all are looking for the happiness that are everlasting, unlimited. So that's spiritual happiness is giving us. Otherwise, what is the difference between spiritual happiness and material happiness? If we are getting all the things that we are getting from spiritual happiness, so better be in the material happiness. But there is a difference. We'll get the higher happiness, we'll get the higher experience, we'll get the unlimited happiness. So that is the spiritual happiness. So next session will be after 3 or 4 days. It will be the level 2 of the session. We'll send you one link also to install one app for the next session, and it will be through your folk guide on Zoom app, or maybe some in small groups, maybe 3 or 4 students. So in that we can explore more, you can ask more questions, we can have more clarity, and we will understand these topics in detail. So thank you so much for attending the first series of level 1, and Hare Krishna.